Bonjour. Au nom de Rogers, j'ai le grand plaisir de vous présenter Rachel Kiddell-Monroe, la lauréate dans la catégorie engagement social et environnemental du 27e Prix Femmes de mérite de la Fondation Prix Femmes de Montréal. Nous sommes très fiers de soutenir cet événement bénéfice qui met en lumière des personnes d'action inspirantes qui, par leur engagement et leur réalisation, ont un impact positif et durable dans notre société. Chez Rogers, nous avons à cœur de redonner à nos communautés et c'est pourquoi nous appuyons année après année la Fondation Prix Femmes qui joue un rôle actif dans l'intégration socio-économique des filles et des femmes montréalaises et qui permet, entre autres, de mettre à l'honneur des femmes telles que Rachel qui s'impliquent activement pour que chaque citoyen du monde soit traité avec dignité, quel que soit son statut social. En tant que présidente du conseil d'administration de la Fondation Prix Femmes de Montréal, je tiens aussi à tous vous remercier pour votre précieux soutien. Alors, je vous donne rendez-vous le 18 mars prochain pour célébrer cette femme exceptionnelle et bien d'autres. Pour plus de détails, visitez le site prisfemmesdemérite.com. Bonne découverte!
It's under the theme of solidarity that we welcome you as well as our guest, recipient of the Women of Distinction Award in the category of social and environmental engagement, Rachel Kiddell-Monroe. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you, Kim. It's great to be here talking to you.
Well, before we dig a little deeper and get into our chat here, tell us a bit more about yourself.
So I am a new Canadian. I came here about 10, 15 years ago. I am a lawyer by training, but I think my life's purpose actually found me, which was when I was in Indonesia, when I was around 23 years old, and I realized that what I wanted to do was actually be helping people, especially oppressed peoples who are living in very difficult circumstances and have been sort of forgotten by the authorities, and that's really been what I've been doing ever since. And otherwise, I'm a mum. I have 3 wonderful boys who are now growing up. My youngest turns 14 today, and I love living here in Montreal and love traveling the world. I've had the opportunity to be in many amazing places, and I get a real kick out of being with people and learning from people, especially from different cultures and backgrounds. And I find that, something really rewarding and fulfilling.
Well, we're going to be learning a little bit more about you. First, we just viewed a message from our partner, Rogers, on the reason why they support your journey, as well as the Women of Distinction Awards. And jumping out very fast were the words give back, community, integration, dignity. Those words seem to have been a motivation behind your journey as well. Tell us how they are important to you.
I think dignity is really central. This sense that, everybody has the capacity to act for themselves, but often people are deprived of that capacity by their circumstances or by people or institutions that are around them. And what I've seen over and over again when I've been working with Médecins Sans Frontières in war zones, when I've been working with Sea Change up in the Inuit communities in the north of Canada, is that people have this enormous capacity to address their own issues if they're given the space and the time and the confidence and the trust to do it. And I think that we can start to recognize that when we start to feel this basic sense of humanity. Humanity really is the foundation of society, but it's incredible how much we forget about humanity. And so I think we really need to bring that back. And how do we just treat each other, you and I, as 2 human beings that interact and, just to be able to care and to be able to empathize and to be able to support. So those kind of principles for me are really basic. And so getting this award for me is wonderful, but I feel somehow that it's all those people that I've been working with that are actually getting the award, because these are the people that have shown me what they need in order to be able to do what they want to do, especially in health crises. So
Well, I hope, I guess another word that comes to mind just listening to you talk is solidarity. If you're saying we're all winning this together, you spoke about Sea Changes initiative up north during COVID-19. You actually built this beautiful bridge of solidarity between communities there and those in Central and South America. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Mm-hmm. So when the COVID pandemic was first announced in Canada that it had arrived here, of course, Indigenous communities throughout Canada became very alarmed because they are the ones who often get hit hardest by these crises. They remembered very well the flu epidemic in the early 1900s, which really decimated their communities. So when COVID came, the community we work with of Clyde River in Nunavut reached out to us and said, you know, is there a way that you can help us to address this crisis? We're very worried. The information we've received is really complicated. It doesn't apply to our community. So we built something that we called a community first roadmap, which was really how to organize, prepare and respond to COVID, but from an Inuit perspective. How would they want to do it? And so we built that and we associated that with resources, plus the accompaniment of helping through each stage. And I'm really proud that that community has managed to protect itself and has no COVID-19 today. And this roadmap really, I just actually came back from Nunavut 2 days ago, and the community, when I spoke with the mayor and the hamlet, they said that this roadmap really helped them to know and to feel confident that they would be able to deal with COVID if it ever came, but also to prevent it coming. And so with this initiative that came from this Inuit community, we adapted it to make a website which has then been picked up by communities in Honduras, in Guatemala, in Peru, in Colombia. We translated it into 6 languages. And what's extraordinary in that is the kind of solidarity that grows. The feeling in Clyde River that people in Latin America are using this roadmap. And then between the Latin American leaders there who've been doing it, they're also now all talking. So on Monday, every month, we have a meeting between all the leaders and they share experiences of how is it to be an Indigenous leader trying to deal with COVID on top of an environmental crisis, on top of maybe civil war, on top of maybe, you know, politics that exclude them. And they're now all communicating with each other and learning from each other and exchanging on important issues like women in leadership, on diversity, on how to support youth through COVID. So it's been a really extraordinary how one tool, online tool with enough depth and thought and reflection behind it has really been picked up by communities.
How amazing to be taking that seat back and to watch it grow into something that's bringing 2 continents together. Did you imagine that this was even a possibility?
No, because I remember when I talked to my colleagues in Clyde River, I was here and I was with my pad and I was like, okay, this is what you need to do for emergency response. Here are 5 points. And I sort of held it up in front of the camera and they wrote those points down. And then I photographed it and sent them. And then we started to build this thing. So it was never in my mind that this would go beyond. But I had a colleague that came and joined me and we worked and we built a website. And from there, it sort of went exponentially. And it's actually now also being used in Kenya by community members there in the southeast of Kenya to train in 60 different schools. And especially recently hearing about the big rise of the number of COVID cases on the African continent, it feels good that there's something there in place.
Well, you've had quite the experiences when we talk about your lifetime. One of them is your move to East Timor. When you did go there, you were dreaming big, which I think is one of your mottos, I guess I could say. Mm-hmm. Did you know prior to leaving there what your goal was going to be, if what you were trying to achieve was a good decision, if it was going to happen in the same way that it happened, or was it a bit of a surprise, just like this project with the Inuits up north?
Yeah, so you're referring to going to Indonesia to work with the Indigenous groups there. Honestly, I had no idea what was going to happen. So, you know, I left because I just felt compelled. Like I said before, I feel like my purpose found me. So I was in London working as a young lawyer. I'd been in Indonesia a few years before, and I got this call one afternoon. It was pouring with rain outside. I remember it so vividly. And this woman phoned me up and said, Rachel, I don't know if you remember me. I'm from Indonesia, my name, and we were wondering if you would come back and work with us to work with this Indigenous tribe. And I mean, I didn't even skip a beat. I was, yes, that's it. It was the call that came. And sort of a few months later, I left. And, but again, this, you know, very remote Indigenous community on this island of Sumatra, who have this most extraordinary outlook on life. And I realized that, you know, I come from my white privilege, I come from my place of being, and I could walk into that environment and see a completely different way of being and doing that was equally, if not more valuable and effective than the way that I was living. So that sense of understanding the value of our diversity and how we can come together and learn with each other and build that solidarity, not just for the sake of solidarity, but in order for our societies to become better. That solidarity and understanding between us underpins what we want to become as human beings. And I think today, when I look at the COVID crisis, when I look at the environmental crisis, when I look at our world that's really having a very difficult place right now, if we can tie those networks, if we can start to create those links, in French we say tisser les liens, if we can start to create those links between people and feel that connection, I think that we can really confront the challenges that we're facing. And we have actually been seeing how that's been happening, which is very exciting.
So do you think it's that trip that developed young Rachel into Rachel that we have in front of us today, recipient of the Women of Distinction Award, like that experience brought on you wanting to see change and create sea change?
Absolutely, because I had so many mixed emotions. One was, how come I didn't know that this was happening to people? How come I didn't know that logging companies were coming in and destroying their land and bringing disease? And why didn't I learn anything about that? That was the first one. Second, why does no one do something about it? And actually worse, that I found, why are people actively encouraging that to happen? And why do they want that to happen? And then the other part of it was that they asked me to help them, made me realize that I had the potential to help them. And that was also really a big changing point for me. And ever since then, I've realized that people are able to be autonomous, they have a lot of resilience, but people need support. We all need support to do the things that we need to do. And however, in whatever situation we're in, we need others to come in, and it can be moral support, it can be financial support, it can be physical support, but together we can make things happen. But it's never, what I also realized was this sense of humility. It was not that I came with the answers. I didn't know how to solve the problem in the people in this community, but with them we could build a solution. And I think that we've brought very directly now into sea change, is like, how do we work with a community, build a solution together, and we can see how effective that can be.
Well, let's talk about change. You're saying individuals can come together, can make a difference. How do you think, or if you know, someone watching today goes, how can I help? How can I make that difference? How can I help build a community of solidarity? What would you say?
Start with something that's familiar to you and that you really care about. We don't have to all be going out to war zones, or, you know, this is not for everybody. I mean, there's people who will do that and they can learn and train and go towards that way. But all of us as individuals, we have communities just around us. You know, where I'm sitting now in Montreal West, you know, there are people who have issues in Montreal West. In the beginning of the COVID epidemic, there were a lot of elderly, we have a lot of elderly people in our community who are not able to go out. So how did we gather together? And there were people who brought people together so we could deliver food baskets, do the shopping for the others. So it's small of that, and the sense of community that built in our community was extraordinary. People I'd never spoken to before. We were all suddenly chatting and who's going to deliver this and who's going to deliver that. So, and that was really powerful. And I think when I look at the impacts that COVID have had and the devastation it's had in, you know, in our long-term care facilities, you know, it's so upsetting because I think we've lost that link with each other. We've lost that feeling of mutual support and community between us. And I really hope that one of the many things that needs to come out of this terrible crisis is that we need to care for each other. We need to have societies that are caring. We need to have an economy that's a caring economy. And, you know, this means bringing in these principles that we're talking about, you know, humanity and solidarity and caring and love. You know, let's not be afraid to talk about love. I mean, that's the basis of it all, is our love for each other in many different ways. But it's, you know, how do we really see each other and create a society that we're all welcome in and that we can all flourish within?
It's funny because many people are saying that the bright side of COVID, if there is one, is the fact that we are kind of going back to our roots, going back to the outdoors, going back to the neighborhoods, as in actually knowing your neighbors. So maybe this pandemic will help bring on that change or that solidarity community, or your word, that caring city that we all need so much.
I believe it will, because I believe that it's inside all of us. I think it's just got lost in all the materialism and the, you know, this sort of economy that we have of scarcity, that everyone has to get as much as they can because we need to protect ourselves and, you know, look after the individual. I think we're starting to realize that there's much more to our lives than that, and there's much more to being human than that. And I think that, I believe that people are good. I believe that people have a lot of good and caring inside them, and it needs a space to come out. And I'm hoping that, you know, that, or I want to believe that this crisis has a reason behind it, because it has caused so much pain. It's caused so much loss. It's caused so much suffering, and that's not going to stop tomorrow, sadly. But we can build something new out of this. And I think we're seeing it around. We're seeing with the rise of women leaders. We see people talking about, well, the countries that have been successful in this COVID epidemic are often the countries led by women. You know, Jacinda Ardern has become suddenly my new idol, you know, because she's so humble in the way that she does it. She says, I'm not the first woman leader to be a leader and have a baby at the same time. I'm not the first woman leader to try to bring in principles of caring and so on. I mean, many people have done this before her, but she's one woman at one moment in history, and she was needed at this specific time. And she is now able to have a country where people are living completely normally, going to football matches, going to rugby matches, going to the beach, going to restaurants, not wearing masks. I mean, it's, you know, it's like another world, right?
Yeah.
And that was based on, you know, there were lots of things, but part of it is this sense of, you know, we have to come together as a community and we have to take care of each other, and this is what it requires.
Well, obviously, mom of 3 boys, I see that you're very caring, and you want everybody to participate in that caring to be able to create this kind of society. If we look back on your journey, would you say that caring was that sprinkle on top of the sundae? Was it that ingredient that brought you to where you are when it comes to social engagement? Because it's pretty incredible what you've accomplished.
I think so. I think that's probably the defining word, because I do care. I care what happens to people. I care that people are mistreated. I care that people are isolated and kept out and are not given access to the things that I've been given access to just by dint of being who I am. So I care about having a world and a planet that we can live on that is healthy and strong. And what I've been seeing most of my growing up, most of my life, is politics and economies that don't nurture that don't drive towards that drive towards the individual, that drive to actually towards being selfish, being only caring about you and your little nuclear family. And we need a change. We need a really fundamental shift, and that's where the caring comes in.
They say that youth is that generation that is bringing in change. Do you see your three boys kind of dipping into that world, or do they feel intimidated that mom is doing so much and we have big shoes to fill?
Oh, I hope not. I hope they don't feel intimidated. I mean, they're going to find their own paths. But as a woman who, and believing in the power of women and the importance of women, having grown up when women were very much more sidelined, and we had to make much more effort to be able to do anything, I want to make sure that they grow up understanding the importance of women and the issues of equality and non-discrimination, and how women still do face a lot of discrimination in the workplace, in their lives all over the world, and that there's still a lot of work to do. But in order to have powerful women, we need to have powerful men as well alongside them, who are sharing values together. So I always thought that I was going to have girls. I have instead these three wonderful boys, and it's made me really understand the importance of having men in the world who care and who can have different values, because it's not only about having a world run by women. It's about having a world built on principles that suit men and women and people of any sexuality that they choose to be, and people of any, all diversities. We need to have values that fit all of us, and not just less than 50% now.
I love that you said that, because many mothers of girls feel that responsibility, but sometimes we tend to forget that moms of boys do feel that responsibility as well. And it's so true. If a woman is going to be strong, there has to be strong men around to encourage as well. So very, very well said. I'm curious to know, with everything that you've accomplished so far, what's next? What are you hoping to see in the future with Sea Change? Is there anything that you haven't done yet that you're like, I would love to try this? May it be bungee jumping or...
I'm not going for bungee jumping right now, I have to say, and parachuting, anything falling out of planes or from high places doesn't suit me. I mean, I really want to see this whole concept of how you start to see community-driven, community-led projects, what we're calling community first projects, really taking center stage in crisis management. So the idea is, in emergency response, how does the community take that driving seat? They know what they need, they know what their own assets are that they have in their community, and then they can start to invite others, external actors in to support them to fill the gaps, or if, for whatever their needs are. And this would represent a real paradigm shift in the way that emergency response in humanitarian crisis is done. So this is what I would really like to see. I'd like to see this model, that we can do more on the projects, that we can start to demonstrate very practically how this can play out. Because I'm a real believer in showing things in practice, not just having a theory and then telling people to adopt that theory.
So do you start at the city level so that the city develops resources for the community, or do we start at the community level where they have to kind of find the resources and show the city that it's valuable?
A bit of both. I think it's got to start with the community, because the communities are ready to do it. They need to be able to bring in the outside, but then where do you need the city? You need the city to change the policies. You need the city to provide funding. You need the city to make sure that the groups get the support that they need, that maybe whether it's medical support, whether it's different sort of technical support. So the city has a role to play, but it needs to start asking the community, what do you want to do and why do you want to do it, and not set the priorities for them. Let them identify the priorities and let them say, this is what we can do, but we can't do these things. Can you help us with that? Then you start to make a real partnership and start to change the model the other way around.
And create caring cities and caring people. Well, on that note, thank you so much. It was a very, very inspirational chat. Thank all of you for joining us. I guess if we're going to take your words, Rachel, we can tell everybody watching today that it is thanks to the caring that they have towards the Montreal Women's Why, that we get to support our community, and especially the women in this community that we know may have a hard time when it comes to inequalities, exclusion, violence, and the pandemic has worsened the cases of many of these women in their daily lives. So by joining us on March 18th, when incredible women like Rachel will be getting her award, you help the Y improve these programs and maintain the programs. So we hope to see you all there. It starts at 8:30. The theme is togetherness. We will care together to get this community going. It's going to happen virtually, of course, and there's going to be some performances and of course awards giving. So we hope to see you all there and to see you buy a ticket to support our community. Thank you so much, Rachel. I gotta say, I had goosebumps in part of the talk. You were very inspiring, and I can only imagine how your students must love listening and wanting to jump into social engagement after half an hour spent with you. I think most of us do.
Thank you, Kim. It was really lovely to talk to you. Really enjoyed it.
Have a great day.
You too. Take care.